300-pound dudes tackling you on a frozen field. The last thing you want to do is stay out there. Believe me, the Rams players were thinking about the jacuzzi at their team hotel, that they find it laughable, but more laughable if they totally disregard the trade whatsoever. This guy has transformed the balance of power in the Eastern Conference. And you could argue the entire defense is going to be absolutely ferocious next year. But if your number one priority is to win a Super Bowl, then J.J. Watt is making a grave mistake. To ride this Chad Henne experiment for an entire game, I might need a whole bottle of Hennessy just to get through that. Guy who's won 8 division titles, who's made 5 AFC championship appearances, who's reached the Super Bowl 3 times and has won 2 Super Bowls for this organization. Aaron Rodgers has only won 1 Super Bowl with Green Bay. Drew Brees has only won 1 Super Bowl with New Orleans. There's only 13 quarterbacks in NFL history that have won multiple Super Bowls, and Big Ben is one of those individuals. Good morning and welcome to Morning Joe right here on J&J Media Network, Facebook Live, Twitter, and on YouTube. I'm Jonah Malkin with you every single Monday and Wednesday morning, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. Yes, there is an expanded look today with the show. Our studio continues to get bigger and bigger. Thank you so much for making Morning Joe a part of your Monday morning plans. A lot to discuss in the NBA. Major players in the buyout market. The 49ers make some huge moves in the draft. And even a special guest, Pac-12 Insider Jonathan Rifkind, will be joining me at the end of the show. So I cannot wait to get into everything. And all I could think about yesterday was Andre Drummond is now a member of the Los Angeles Lakers. Yes, he was bought out by the Cleveland Cavaliers a couple days ago, was cleared through waivers, and he is officially rather sorry. I was so excited I could hardly get the words to come out of my mouth. He was so excited that he has officially signed with the Los Angeles Lakers. Yes, Andre Drummond is a member of the LA Lakers. This is a guy who was drafted by the Detroit Pistons in 2012, the 9th overall pick, 2-time All-Star, 4-time NBA All-Leader in rebounding, led the NBA in rebounding 4 times, was a 3rd-team All-NBA player in the 2015-2016 season. Hasn't played a game since February 12th with the Cleveland Cavaliers. They basically just sat him on the sidelines and said, hey, we're going to trade you, so we're not going to play you. We don't want your trade value to diminish. They weren't able to find a trading partner. They agreed to mutually buy out to the buyout, and the Lakers apparently pursued him extremely hard. LeBron, AD were some of the notable stars on the Lakers to recruit him heavily, and now he's a member of the Purple and Gold. This is a guy that this season, with the Cavs in 25 games, 17.5 points, 13.5 rebounds, 1.6 steals per game. This is a guy for his career who's averaged 14 points, 14 rebounds, and 1.5 blocks per game. Now, I know that if you look in a vacuum at this buyout and this signing for the Lakers, is Andre Drummond going to make a huge impact for this current Lakers roster? I don't know. With LeBron and AD out, he's not going to jumpstart their offense. He's not going to ignite their offense. But I will say this. When LeBron and Anthony Davis come back, now you're looking at a complete roster, a complete team that finally is filling that void. All season long, the biggest impediment to the Lakers, the most glaring issue, the most glaring deficiency on their roster was the center position. Marc Gasol just wasn't giving it to him, fouling early, and now you've got a guy who can actually anchor the middle of the paint, who can rebound the ball effectively, who can defend at a high level, and now he's joining the Lakers. I mean, now the Lakers finally have someone who can be tasked with the assignment of having to try and defend Nikola Jokic, the Joel Embiids of the world, Yusuf Nurkic, DeAndre Ayton, some of these elite bigs and centers in the NBA. Now, finally, the Lakers have someone who can actually match up with them. Gasol couldn't do it. Anthony Davis would reluctantly do it for only stretches of time. And Montrezl Harrell is too small. And so this Lakers team that was already so effective at rebounding the basketball now just added a 4-time rebounding champ. And this is how the NBA has totally revamped itself, because the priorities of players have changed. Players have always valued winning. They've always valued winning. They're competitors. They love to win. But players didn't always prioritize winning. And this is the biggest difference in the NBA right now. You look at guys in the past, Carmelo Anthony, perfect example. In 2011, was traded from the Denver Nuggets to the New York Knicks. He had an opportunity, and he re-signed with the Knicks that summer. He had an opportunity to join LeBron, to join Dwayne Wade in the Miami Heat and form a big three down in South Beach. And instead, he opted to sign with the Knicks because they would give him more money. And he thought genuinely that he could win in the Big Apple. But was he really prioritizing winning? And I would argue no. Because if you're really prioritizing winning, then it's a no-brainer. You join LeBron, you join Anthony Davis, and you sign with the Miami Heat. And instead, Chris Bosh ended up filling that role, and they became the big three. But the thing is, now we're in a new age of player empowerment, and players are starting to position themselves better to land in winning environments and winning destinations, perhaps better than they ever have in the past. Perhaps better than they ever have, because the reality is the players still want their money. They're still chasing money at times, but now winning can sometimes outweigh the money. Perfect example, Blake Griffin was just playing with the Detroit Pistons, a losing franchise this season. And now he joins the Brooklyn Nets. Chasing a ring, sure. We can all acknowledge that. But he turned his situation overnight from a dire situation to now competing for a championship. Reggie Jackson last year, coincidentally also with the Detroit Pistons, signed with the LA Clippers after being bought out by the Pistons. Now, sure, the Clippers didn't end up winning a championship, but that was a winning environment. And so he gave himself that opportunity to now perhaps win a championship with the Clippers. Again, it didn't happen last year. We'll see if it happens this year. But now we're seeing again, Andre Drummond, a perfect example, was playing with the Cleveland Cavaliers that didn't necessarily have a tremendous future, tremendous direction at the time. Then they started making all these trades for an abundance of centers for Jared Allen and all these guys. And I like Darius Garland and I like Colin Sexton, but Andre Drummond wasn't a part of their future. And he already was disappointed and frustrated by the fact that he wasn't playing. And now that he was bought out, he looked at the market, he viewed the landscape, and he said, okay, which team can I be an impact player? And I'm going to touch on the Brooklyn Nets in just a second, but the Lakers were the most obvious place for him to go, because this is a guy who could come in and immediately provide a significant impact right away. Be the starting center for a team that's contending in not only the Western Conference, but trying to defend their NBA championship. And this is a Lakers team, mind you, that was already the fourth best rebounding team in the NBA. This is with Anthony Davis missing over 6 weeks. This is with LeBron, Kuzma, Montrezl Harrell being your leading rebounders. And they're the fourth best rebounding team already. Not to mention, they're the number 2 defense in the league. Andre Drummond, 4-time rebounding champ, rated the 13th best defensive player in the NBA, according to Basketball Reference. So Now, when you look at this Lakers roster that is much more complete, now you say to yourself, okay, if they're matching up with the Brooklyn Nets, if they can crash the glass, they can rebound the ball effectively, defend at a high level, now you can rely on LeBron and AD and that star power to carry you over the top. But prior to Andre Drummond, there was a massive void right in the middle of this team that was not addressed. And unfortunately, Marcus Gasol is glacially slow. Montrezl Harrell is undersized. And they were feeling the absences of JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard. Those two provided a huge spark and were a big reason why the Lakers ended up winning last year. And so now they finally have that missing piece. And in my mind, a guy that can really return the Lakers to that big status. Last year, we talked all the time about how big this team is, how much length they possess. And Andre Drummond, whether he's 6'11", whether he's 6'10", 6'11", 7 feet, doesn't matter. This is a big body that can anchor the paint, and this is a perfect fit for both he and the Lakers. So major upgrade and addition if you're LA. Good job by Rob Pelinka, Frank Vogel, the entire staff for recruiting this guy, because this is a major acquisition, especially when you just saw your counterpart, the Clippers, sign your former teammate in Rajon Rondo, which was a major play for them. But want to transition to the Brooklyn Nets. This is such a predictable story now. LaMarcus Aldridge, a 7-time All-Star. Where does he go? Signs with the Brooklyn Nets. So I have two reactions to this. First reaction is, this is a fantasy. We are living in a winter wonderland. This is a utopian society. Are we serious? This is absurd. Adam Silver, do you have any reverence for competition? Seriously. This is absolutely outrageous. The 6th All-Star on the Brooklyn Nets in the same year. The same team. Now, Adam Silver and David Stern are different commissioners. Both firm, but Adam Silver is much less stringent, much more pro player, and advocates for players much more than David Stern ever did. But remember when David Stern vetoed the trade that would have sent Chris Paul to the Lakers? It would have sent Lamar Odom to the New Orleans Hornets and Pau Gasol to the Houston Rockets. It was a complicated 3-team trade. And at the time, the NBA owned a majority stake in the New Orleans Hornets. And so the NBA felt that Dell Demps, the general manager of the New Orleans Hornets, was not within his right to make this trade. And the NBA thought that pairing Kobe Bryant with Chris Paul would cause an imbalance of power in NBA. Now, those two guys at the time, had they been playing, this would have been the 2011-2012 season. It was actually the lockout season, a shortened season. And those two players were the only active players on the Lakers roster at that time that would have been All-Stars. They had 17 combined All-Star appearances between Kobe and Chris Paul. Andrew Bynum hadn't yet been an All-Star. He didn't achieve that status until later in the season. And David Stern thought that those two players being paired together would be overwhelming. Let me break this down for you. The Brooklyn Nets, their roster, the number of combined All-Star appearances on this Brooklyn Nets team, as currently constructed, 41 All-Star appearances between LaMarcus Aldridge, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan, James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Durant. 41 combined All-Star appearances between the 6 of them. And 2 of those guys, in LaMarcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin, who at one point in their career were the number one options on their respective teams, have combined for 13 All-Star appearances. Are we serious, NBA? Is this a joke? All 6 of these guys are on the same team. Now, I understand that Steve Nash is going to be having to traverse through this maze of trying to find picking and plugging the right players. But this is just an embarrassment of riches, to the point that the only reason why I've even been able to maintain any sanity at all, is because LeBron is so dominant as a basketball player that he's the only reason I even have any hope that the Lakers or anyone else can compete against the Brooklyn Nets this year. So that's number one. Number two is, and I want to apologize to Kevin Durant in advance, because this was uncontrollable. This was out of his control, out of his hands, through no doing of his own. He is not going to garner the same kind of respect and the same kind of credit that he feels he should deserve if the Brooklyn Nets win this year's championship. I'm sorry, he can't. This is stacking the deck. This is overload. This is Operation Overload. This is a bit gratuitous at this point, because the talent pendulum has swung so flagrantly in the Brooklyn Nets' direction that even if Durant is the best player and the most talented player on this Brooklyn Nets team, they have a bevy of players who you can attribute their success to. And even if Durant is the quote-unquote scoring leader on that team and is the most talented player, you've got James Harden playing like an MVP. You've got Kyrie Irving, who's a 6-time All-Star. And you got Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge probably coming off your bench. Maybe one of them is starting. DeAndre Jordan even has made an All-Star appearance. I'm sorry, but you, quite frankly, don't deserve all that credit. And again, it's through no fault of his own. This is through no fault of Kevin Durant. In fairness to him, when he signed with the Brooklyn Nets 2 summers ago, he didn't anticipate that all these events would transpire. He didn't anticipate that an all-time great scorer in his prime, in James Harden, would be in such a turbulent environment, such a tumultuous situation in Houston, that he would forcibly remove himself out of that situation, demand a trade, and actually be sent to the very team he wanted to be traded to. He couldn't have foreseen that. He couldn't have foreseen Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge demanding not trades, but being bought out, and then signing with them immediately after, midway through the season. So in fairness to Kevin Durant, he didn't anticipate these acts happening. But it doesn't negate the fact that it's happened. It's transpired. You can't rewrite history. It's happened. They're on your team. This is the situation you're in. And you can say it's unfair, but to be honest, again, through no fault of his own, there's just too much talent there for Kevin Durant to be the sole reason why they're going to win this championship if they do. Let's think about why he left Golden State. Kevin Durant left Golden State because he didn't feel like he was garnering the type of respect and validation that he sought. He wanted to be the sole reason behind Golden State's success. And there's no question that he was a vital and instrumental piece in their back-to-back championship runs. But he thought that by being the best player on a championship team, that would equate to him being solely responsible for that team's success. And that is where the error lies. That's where his opinion is flawed. Because the narrative surrounding Kevin Durant his entire career with Golden State was that he's just joining a well-oiled machine. He's joining a well-established powerhouse that has already put the NBA on notice that they are forming a dynasty. Already. They'd just gone 73-9 the year prior. The second consecutive season that they'd reached the NBA Finals. They even knocked out his own Oklahoma City Thunder when the Thunder were up 3-1 en route to reaching that NBA Finals. And he was never going to be beloved, revered, and idolized the way that Steph is in the Bay, because it's Steph's team. Draymond is the heart and soul. Klay Thompson makes up the other duo of that Patterson Splash Brothers duo. Kevin Durant wasn't going to insert himself into that fold. He wasn't going to chisel himself into the statues of all-time greats with the Golden State Warriors. Now, I still think that his jersey should be retired, but that's not the debate at hand. And so when I just look at Kevin Durant, there's so much talent on that team that I just feel like you cannot just attribute it to him, even if he plays sensationally well and they reach the NBA Finals and they win a championship. Because I just want there to be some consistent messaging. I really do. If you are the NBA, at some point, you have to be able to veto an additional signing like this and just say, you know what, Brooklyn, we're going to force you to play with the roster that you have with your meager 5 All-Stars. We're going to force you to play with 5 All-Stars. I'm sorry, I know we're terrible for precluding you from signing a 6th All-Star on your team. At some point, it's just overkill. And at some point, the NBA has to step in. And again, I'm not advocating for NBA regulation, but I do think that there should be some changes. So, Morning Joe, right here on J&J Media Network, Facebook Live, Twitter, and on YouTube Mondays and Wednesday mornings, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. Again, coming up in about 10 minutes or so, Pac-12 insider Jonathan Rifkind will be joining the show. Excited to bring him on. But first, some big news in the NFL. This happened right at the beginning of the weekend, right when the weekend commenced. The San Francisco 49ers and the Miami Dolphins made some headlines heading into the weekend. The San Francisco 49ers have traded up to move up in the draft. They traded with the Miami Dolphins to select and receive the 3rd overall pick in this year's draft. So the 49ers traded their 12th pick, a 3rd-round draft pick in this year's draft, and first round picks in the 2022 and 2023 drafts to the Dolphins for this year's number 3 overall pick. Now, the 49ers have clearly made their intentions clear. They are going to select a quarterback in this year's draft. They've made their intentions clear. They've got major health concerns moving forward about Jimmy G. That's the intention. That's the message that they're sending. And I'm sorry, you don't move up from 12 to 3 just to select a generational offensive tackle or pass rusher rather, or defensive tackle. I'm sorry. You just don't. If you're in a committed long distance relationship, you've been together 2 years, you don't download Tinder and Hinge. You just don't, because what it says is that clearly you don't peruse through those apps and take cursory glances at the people on those apps unless you're starting to let your mind run amok and think about greener pastures. Because if you do and you're caught, you're no longer in that committed relationship. You're no longer in a relationship at all. Your significant other is going to dump you, and that's it. So when you look at Jimmy Garoppolo, yes, his numbers have been pretty good, 24-8 as a starter. And this is a guy that during his Super Bowl run completed 69% of his passes, but the problem is he missed 10 games last year due to injuries, high ankle sprain. And in the 4 seasons that he's been a starter, he's only been able to make it through the season healthy one time, only one time in his career. And these are where the reservations and the reticence lies, is because they're not sure, can we trust Jimmy Garoppolo to stay healthy throughout his entire career? And he's got 2 more years on his contract, which is true. But I think if you're John Lynch and the 49ers, you're saying to yourself, well, we'd almost rather draft a quarterback, maybe have them sit out a year or 2 as a backup behind Jimmy Garoppolo, and then we move on, and then we've got our quarterback. The trend in the NFL is to win with cheap quarterbacks. Tom Brady is the exception because he's 43, but more importantly, the contract that he did sign was more akin to that of a rookie contract. The guy making between $5 to $10 million. So the lower your salary is for the quarterback, that's the trend that teams are seeing. The easier it is to probably make a Super Bowl run and to win. And the San Francisco 49ers are saying to themselves, we are in a championship window right now. We like Jimmy G a lot, and we've got a championship defense, but we need our quarterback to stay healthy. They've got a championship defense. They've got a championship coach. And last year was a bit of a fluke and an anomaly because literally their entire defense was injured. And George Kittle was out for big stretches as well. Even the Eagles now, there's no consensus about Jalen Hurts anymore. They just stated that they're unsure about Jalen Hurts. No consensus within the organization about Hurts' status as the franchise quarterback. So, case in point, that football is such a fickle sport. It's such an ephemeral sport that people always seek immediate gratification. If you no longer demonstrate a bit of precociousness, they're going to deem you a backup. Just look at the draft last year, 2020. 11 quarterbacks taken in the draft. 4 of those 11 were able to start at least one game. Of those 4, only 2 of those quarterbacks were actual locks to start. Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. Those were the only 2 quarterbacks from last year's draft that are legitimate faces of their franchises moving forward. We still have questions about Tua, and we still have questions about Jalen Hurts, who are the only 2 other guys to have started. Look at 2019. Same exact thing. 11 quarterbacks drafted. Only 5 of them, of those 11, started at least one game, and only 2 of those 5 quarterbacks are locks to be starters. Kyler Murray and Daniel Jones. And to be honest, Daniel Jones, this is the year to prove whether or not he really is the franchise-altering quarterback that the Giants need. Dwayne Haskins, Gardner Minshew, and Drew Lock were the only other quarterbacks to start, and clearly they're not franchise quarterbacks. So teams no longer are kind of exerting this patience anymore, especially at the quarterback position. They can no longer afford to wait, or at least that's the feeling that they give off. I mean, hell, even Baker Mayfield, who led his team to the AFC divisional round, the Browns aren't completely sold on him either, because if they were, they would have signed him to a long-term deal already. And they haven't yet. So the 49ers like Jimmy Garoppolo, but they're just a bit reticent to sign him to re-sign him again because of his injuries. And which is why they made that push to move up in the draft, select the number 3 overall pick in this year's draft. They're willing to make that change in pursuit of a championship. Again, they reached the Super Bowl just 2 years ago. So they know that they've got the makeup to go back there. Not to mention, what this also says is that the Dolphins, at the moment, are still fully sold on Tua. Personally, I actually agree with their decision. I do think it would be in their better interest to perhaps sign a great or draft a great offensive tackle like Penei Sewell, or a great wide receiver, an elite wide receiver like a Jamar Chase, like a Devontae Smith, just to see what they really have in Tua. Because I do think that they kind of need to slowly take the training wheels off of his bike. And he was thrown into the fire. He had just recovered from hip surgery, so I'm willing to give him a pass as he's kind of getting his feet wet slowly. But this is going to be the year that you'll be able to tell if you're Brian Flores and the Dolphins whether or not you really got someone. So we will see what happens. By the way, Leonard Fournette re-signed with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now all 22 starters, both on the offensive and defensive side of the football for Tampa Bay, are back from that Super Bowl winning team. I don't know how many times it's ever been done. I tried looking it up. I couldn't really find it, to be honest. If you do, comment and shout out. Give me the answer. And while you're at it, while you're there, like and subscribe my YouTube page or follow us on Twitter. But if you're the Tampa Bay Bucks, this offseason could not have gone any better. You have re-signed a running back who accounted for 447 total yards from scrimmage in the postseason in 4 games, which, mind you, in 13 games played in the regular season, only accounted for 367 rushing yards. And now you've got a guy in the postseason that accounted for 4 touchdowns, which was the most of any player from scrimmage in the postseason last year. 4 touchdowns, including a 27-yard touchdown run in the Super Bowl. You've re-signed Levante David. You've re-signed Ndamukong Suh. You brought back Chris Godwin. You brought back Shaq Barrett. Now you brought back Leonard Fournette. Obviously, Tom Brady reworked his deal. You re-signed Gronk. This entire team is still intact, which is ultimately the most important thing. So, yes, Antonio Brown is still available. I'm sure they'll re-sign him for some mid-level exception, probably less, probably the bare minimum. So we'll see what happens. But again, playoff Lenny now returns to Tampa Bay. Amazing. 22 starters all returning back on this team. Okay, finally, last topic, and then Pac-12 Insider, executive producer of the Ryan D. Leaf Show, host of Just Recruiting. Just to name a couple more, broadcaster for the CIF San Diego section, Jonathan Rifkind, will be joining me in about in a couple minutes. Just wanted to react quickly to March Madness and the Sweet 16. This tournament ceases to disappoint. It really does. And there's a reason why it's been given this moniker of March Madness. It really is, because every game is unpredictable. And you have certain teams that are just dominant throughout the entire tournament for long stretches, and then other teams like Oregon State, who all of a sudden are the hottest team in the tournament and had the most improbable path to reaching the Elite Eight. They had to win out the Pac-12, 3 straight games, 3 straight days. They've won 9 out of their last 10 games. And all of a sudden you look up and they're in the Elite Eight with actually arguably the most favorable matchup of the 8 teams remaining. They're facing Houston, a 2 seed, and they've got a pretty good chance of winning that. Gonzaga has been amazing, completely dominant. I love the depth that they've been showing. Again, just dismantling, created, especially in the second half. Drew Timme, Corey Kispert, those guys are leading the way, averaging 19 points per game. And you don't even get to Jalen Suggs, who's going to be at least a top 5 pick in the NBA draft. I know that Jonathan may see him going even higher in the draft this year. Joel Ayayi, Andrew Nembhard, this team is really deep, and they're physical and they're big, and they're one of those teams that can adapt to any style. They can play fast if you want to play fast. They can operate in the half court. So this is going to be really interesting, because they are facing now perhaps the best matchup if you're an opponent of Gonzaga in USC, because USC is on a roll. They've got size in the middle with the Mobley brothers. They've got guards who can shoot it on the wings. Their guards hit 9 of 13 shots yesterday from the outside. USC it has been really, really impressive. And this is difficult for me to actually say and acknowledge on air because I've always been, growing up, a UCLA fan out of Los Angeles. Then obviously when I went to school in Wisconsin, I rooted for Wisconsin. I still root for them hard. So I'm happy I got UCLA in there, but USC, I'd be lying if I said they don't look impressive right now, because they do. So that matchup is going to be fascinating. I cannot wait to see how those two bigs of Gonzaga handle the USC bigs, and who can control the rebounding and the shooting is going to be really important. And then UCLA, I got to give them love. Overtime win, 88-78 over Alabama, the 2 seed. Another improbable run for a team that perfectly was summed up by their head coach, Mick Cronin, which is that we were losing games. And UCLA had lost 4 straight games prior to entering the tournament. Now they've won 4 straight. But in those losses, they were really pleased with their level of play. So they lost the games, but they weren't disappointed by their level of play. And I think that that's extremely important psychologically when you enter the tournament, because once they hit Michigan State in the first 4 and they knocked them off, then they were just on a roll. And they could not be stopped. This team has been playing extremely well. I'm looking forward to the matchup against Michigan, who's rolling. Although it was just announced Isaiah Livers is completely out for the tournament. So we'll see what happens. Hunter Dickinson at 7-1 is a beast down low. And I just want to give a brief shout out to Oral Roberts on a fantastic tournament. The Golden Eagles, they were about 2 inches to the right short of advancing to the Elite Eight. I mean, they played Arkansas, and Max Abmas went the length of the floor in 3.1 seconds. 3.1 seconds, and nearly pulled off one of the most incredible buzzer beater threes that we would have ever seen in March Madness. It didn't happen, but we were super close to that. And then again, as I mentioned, Oregon State faces Houston tonight. What a tournament, what a run that they have had. So Madness continues tonight. Elite Eight begins tonight and Tuesday. Cannot wait for that. All right, and now it is my pleasure to welcome onto the show Pac-12 Insider, host and executive producer of the Ryan D. Leaf Show, host of Just Recruitment, broadcaster in the CIF San Diego section. This guy just really does it all. And Johnny, Jonathan Rifkind, as I welcome you onto the show. Thanks for coming on. You got so many titles now, Johnny. I don't always know what to start with, but you're a busy man, and I know that your emotions were kind of taking a ride last night as your Oregon Ducks were facing USC. What were your thoughts during that matchup?
Well, I'm wearing a USC shirt, so
and I didn't even see that.
And well, as I know you are, Jonah, you're probably wearing shorts under there, and nobody knows that. I'm also wearing
sweats, actually.
Oh, you're in. Okay, at least you're more comfortable. I'm wearing shorts, but they're Oregon shorts, so I had to offset the USC shirt with a pair of Oregon shorts. But no, I mean, look, it was a tough game. USC is longer than Oregon is. Oregon has a bunch of athletes, but not necessarily basketball players. USC is a bunch of basketball players that executed better. And Andy Enfield, who was one of the best Division III shooting guards at Johns Hopkins way back in the day, instituted an offense that is picturesque against guys who want to use a dribble drive, but also want to shoot the ball. You kill the perimeter, you kill the paint, you win the game. That's what USC did.
Now, the Pac-12, they've been unbelievable this tournament. 12-2 in this postseason. Really, the 2 losses are by default because Oregon and USC had to play one another. They easily could have been 13-1 if they were matched up against different teams.
Yeah, friendly fire.
So, but USC, I just talked about it before you hopped on here. They've been super, super impressive and dominant in this tournament because of, I think, the versatility, the different ways that they can play. They've got the bigs in the middle, and they've got the guards that shoot the ball extremely well on the outside. How impressed have you been with USC's run, and what kind of chance do you give them against Gonzaga and the Bulldogs tomorrow?
I'm very impressed with USC's run. I'm just as impressed with how they beat Oregon as I am with how they beat Kansas a couple nights ago. I don't know. I think USC is an interesting story because they have all of the pieces to be arguably one of the best teams in the country. Now they're in the Elite Eight, so they have the credibility to back it up with play on the court. But you didn't see it in the regular season. They just lack continuity. Isaiah Mobley, the other of the Mobley brothers, the older but the smaller version, is breaking out right now. He recognizes, I think, that this is really his shot to get into the league. And the only way that he's going to do that is if he finds a way to carve out his own role as a contributor for USC and help lead them. And to this point, he has up to the Elite Eight. So I've been really impressed with Isaiah Mobley specifically. Yeah, I mean, the USC's, they're incredible defensively. They really are. And Andy Enfield is not a defensive-minded coach. He has hired some very good assistants who at other schools have instituted good defense. And the 2-1-2 hybrid zone defense, or the 3-2 hybrid zone defense that they played last night against Oregon, you're going to see against Gonzaga, because what it does is it clogs the perimeter when the ball gets into the middle, which is the way you're supposed to beat that zone. You collapse, you take away the space, and you force an errant shot. If USC executes that zone defense the way that they did against Oregon when they play Gonzaga tomorrow night, they're going to have every opportunity to win that game, because Gonzaga's pieces the game plan is pretty similar to Oregon's. They have I would say that they're a little bit more they have a little bit more continuity offensively. Oregon has a little bit more of like the big body bully ball size down low. But other than that, their pace of play is pretty similar. So for USC, they're going to play that zone. And no other team has faced a zone like that. Not certainly throughout the tournament. You see it sometimes in the regular season, but even teams like Syracuse, right? They play a straight 2-3 zone. You don't really see this sort of 2-1-2, 3-2 hybrid. And when you can execute it the way that USC did, you could probably beat anybody.
Now, UCLA under Mick Cronin now advancing to the Elite Eight for the first time since reaching 3 consecutive trips in 2006, 2007, 2008. Obviously, Oregon State is reaching the Elite Eight on, again, probably the most unpredictable run. Why have we been kind of overlooking the Pac-12? Do you think that this year's kind of a one-off, or this really is a true reflection of the type of depth that exists within the Pac-12?
No, I think this is the breakout year of, I don't know, the last 4 or 5 years. I think the Pac-12 has consistently been good in basketball. They've consistently put teams in. They've been held up by Oregon. Of course, Oregon had that Final Four run back in 2017. Was a Jordan Bell rebound against North Carolina away from making the championship and facing Gonzaga, a Gonzaga team I think they could have beaten, led by Zach Collins that season. But the Pac-12 athletically has been great. They've been outputting phenomenal basketball players. Washington, of course, has been outputting some of the best defenders in the NBA. Oregon has a handful of guys. USC, Kevin Porter Jr. is finally playing well in Houston now that he's settling in emotionally. UCLA has a couple of guys. I mean, like, these teams are consistently outputting pretty strong talent. So why isn't it conducive to national championships or to the national stage when they get to the tournament? I just think it's the overall play on the West Coast up to this season. I think that the playing field was more even this year with the coronavirus forcing teams to play in conference. And the Pac-12 as a conference is just one of the more competitive conferences. And because the preparation was there and because the athleticism, not the athleticism, but the preparation and the strength of schedule, we'll call it, for some of these teams, you know, when they played this conference-only schedule, it was competitive. They were able to fine-tune the parts of the game that they needed to for the tournament, and it ended up working out. Oregon State's a great example of that. I mean, Oregon State picked to finish last in the Pac-12, was the 8th seed in the Pac-12 tournament, went on to win, and then in the NCAA tournament, Wayne Tinkle's squad was slept on, and here they are in the Elite Eight as a 12th seed. So the Oregon State's a perfect example of just sort of the epitome of the Pac-12 for this past season.
Now, have you been writhing in bed knowing that Oregon's not in the Elite Eight, but Oregon State
I hate you,
is
man.
in the Civil War?
Well, it's not called the Civil War anymore, Jonah. Come on,
That's true.
man.
Apologies.
It is now
Apologies.
called the rivalry.
Negative.
It
Right.
will
The
forever
rivalry.
be the Civil War. No, I'm not writhing in bed. I'm very happy. I told you this on the phone last night, Jonah. As much as I love Oregon, as much as I want to see my Ducks win, at this point in my life, I'm a Pac-12 fan, man. I'm excited to see USC, UCLA, and Oregon State go and try and kick some ass. And I am firmly on the Oregon State bandwagon right now. For the first time in my entire life, if it's USC, UCLA, or Oregon State right now, I'm all in on Oregon State.
So let's stick with these three teams. Of these three teams, when you factor in opponents, when you factor in personnel, which one of these three teams do you think has the greatest chance of not only reaching the championship game, but also winning the NCAA championship?
Probably USC. Okay, well, reaching maybe not, because they have to play Gonzaga. With that being said, if USC can beat Gonzaga, get to the Final Four, I don't see any team left. That maybe Baylor, because they can match up with size, but they get into foul trouble very quickly. Any team other than Baylor that can match up sufficiently with USC, even Michigan, because Michigan has bigs. They have guys that can match up, but their bigs aren't athletic. They're bully ball bigs. They're like the Oregon bigs, right? Why does USC have, or why are USC's bigs different? Why do they stand out? Because they have guys that can handle the ball, stretch the floor, and also play down low and get in your grill. Evan Mobley is I don't know. He's like if Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was better. Like, he's just this guy who isn't going to be a point guard, but has the skills of a point guard, isn't going to be a center, but has the skills of a center. So he's somewhere in between. He can stretch the floor. He's incredibly intelligent with the basketball. You can run the offense through him. You can set him up off ball. Everything about him, you can plug him in and play, and he's going to make your team better. So because of that reason, USC and the continuity that they have, they're the best of the Pac-12 teams to make it, or the most favorited. I think UCLA is just playing with a lot of heart. Mick Cronin's a genius. He didn't get the credit he deserved at Cincinnati, and so now he's finally getting that opportunity here with UCLA in the tournament. But UCLA's, I don't know. I think the Jaime's phenomenal. I think he's phenomenal, but I don't think that he's going to lead this team when it comes to playing teams like with Evan Mobley or with Jalen Suggs. Or honestly, even Michigan is a bunch of different pieces around that are a little bit stronger than what UCLA can play defensively. And then Oregon State has all the momentum, right? Like, they're the Cinderella story. They're the first 12th seed to ever make it this far. All these different, you plug in all the different firsts that Oregon State is breaking here, and it's a heartwarming story, and I want the story to continue. But I don't think as a contender that they're the favorite of any of the three Pac-12 teams.
The interesting thing is I agree that from a talent standpoint, USC is probably the most talented team of those three Pac-12 teams remaining. But I would acknowledge, though, that the matchup with Gonzaga is the one looming, which is why I would almost argue that it could be Oregon State or UCLA, simply because of their path may be slightly easier, not having to go through Gonzaga in the Elite Eight. And we actually had were you about to add something?
Well, I was just going to say, for Oregon State, I mean, Houston has the best defense in the tournament. Like, they are the best, and we saw it against Syracuse. They held Syracuse to 46 points. They held a team that is one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the country to 46 points in the Sweet 16. Houston, I mean,
that's true.
Coming into this tournament, Houston's net defensive rating was 3. Even though they only beat Rutgers by 3 and they played Cleveland State to open up the tournament, they're still, I think they moved up to 1 or 2 in the net rating defensively. So their defensive prowess is second to none, and it's going to make it very hard for Oregon State. Oregon State can't find a way to free up John Lucas and Ethan Thompson. They're not going to win that game against Houston.
Good point. By the way, we got a chance to call some of Evan Mobley's games in high school last year. And I remember
you should have told me. I would have put up the picture. I have it on my phone.
You should. I do have the photo. I'll have to bring that up. Next morning, Joe, when he gets drafted in the NBA, that's going to be the opportune time to put that on, because I remember he was just a monster in high school. Like you said, had the skills of a guard despite being 7 feet. And a little tidbit of information about Jaime Jaquez. Apparently, Mick Cronin actually tried to recruit him to Cincinnati at the time when he was a Cincinnati head coach, and Jaquez denied that opportunity to go to UCLA.
Why would you go to Cincinnati when Kentucky's offering you a scholarship?
True. So let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, Johnny. Shifting to the NBA a little bit, because a couple notable players in the buyout market signed with different teams. Andre Drummond just announced that he's signing with the Lakers. Do you feel like he is the missing piece for the Lakers? What did you make of that signing yesterday?
If the Lakers don't have LeBron James and or Anthony Davis, meaning they can have one or the other, this signing doesn't matter. All you're doing is adding a guy with low offensive efficiency, and he'll get the 16 rebounds a game. These video game numbers for blocks and rebounds, like, those are going to help. Those will help any team. It doesn't matter. Like, you can't deny that he brings that caliber, the stout rebounding. He's another big body down low, excellent timing defensively. He's going to throw off, a dribble drive on it by a guard along the baseline. But he's not going to win you game. He's bringing in Andre Drummond as a replacement, right, for Anthony Davis, which I don't think he is, and I don't think that anybody should believe that he is, because he's a very different player in a different situation here. He's not gonna give enough wins above replacement for the Lakers for it to really matter. So, he's another body. I think that we see Brooklyn. It's early. We see Brooklyn. It's early on a Monday. What are you doing to me, Morning Joe? We see Brooklyn, sign LaMarcus Aldridge, sign Blake Griffin. The Lakers as the favorite in the West when they're fully healthy. And honestly, now that I see the Lakers without LeBron and AD, I'm not so sure they're the favorite with LeBron and AD, because there are teams with far more continuity, much better depth on the bench. And I mean, look, I'm the furthest thing from a Laker fan you're going to find this side of the Mississippi. But I was on this season is a wash, hand the trophy to the Lakers and let's move on to next year hype bandwagon before the season started too, because I didn't think that there was going to be anybody out there that was going to contend with them, both in the East, but also in the West. And now when you look at this team, I mean, Kuzma decides night to night what kind of night he wants to have. Sometimes he's 1 for 18, and sometimes he's 17 for 18. This guy is, I mean, he's
too inconsistent. I agree.
It's not even inconsistent. It's frustrating, right? Like,
he's got to decide what he wants to be every night.
Because as a Laker fan or as an NBA analyst, like, this guy is obviously talented. And how amazing would it be if he could give you 20 and 6 every night, whether LeBron James and Anthony Davis are on the floor or not, with some efficiency? So that's a huge help. That's what the Lakers need. You're not going to get that from Andre Drummond. There were times when they got it last year from Danny Green. There are very few times when you get it from Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, but that's when you have LeBron James and Anthony Davis. Without both those guys, I mean, everybody's talking about how this team might be a play-in team. I don't think it's going to get that bad. I think they'll still be a middle of the West seed. And I mean, even if they were a play-in team, can you imagine being Utah or the Clippers and having to face the Lakers the first round of the postseason with AD and LeBron back? That's not. I mean, that they're going to lose that series, so they could be the first 8 seed to win and move on. But I don't know. I'm just having my doubts about the Lakers right now, watching the production of this team without their 2-star players.
So let's transition to the East, because the other notable signee from the buyout market, LaMarcus Aldridge, signs with the Nets. I started off one of my rants this morning that the NBA, Adam Silver at some point you just have to have more reverence for competition. I'm sorry. At some point, you just got to put your foot down and say, Brooklyn, you're going to be forced to play with a meager 5 all-stars. Don't give them a 6 all-star. Johnny, those 6 guys have combined, and those 6 guys being Aldridge, Griffin, DeAndre Jordan, James Harden, Kyrie Irving, KD, have combined for 41 all-star appearances. At some point, it gets ridiculous. It gets absurd. You don't need him. It's a bit gratuitous at this point. Just sign somewhere else, LaMarcus Aldridge. This is absolutely ridiculous to me. What did you make of him? Of course, joining the Nets, who somehow seem to be the destination that every free agent, every player that has just been bought out is seeking to go play for.
Let's see. How many years have we had this conversation, Jonah? Not just you and me, but us NBA people in society, right? 2016, we had it about the Warriors. No, let's even go back further back than that. 2013 with the Heat, 2014 with the Heat, 2015 was kind of an oddball year. 2016 with the Warriors, 17 with the Warriors, 18 with the Warriors, 19 with the Lakers, 20 with the Lakers, 21 with the Nets. This has been a conversation with teams for the last almost 8 since LeBron went to Miami. At this point. And yeah, there were whispers back in 2008 and 2009 with Boston, with the big 3, and there were whispers with the Lakers in 2010, but we didn't really have this conversation about, like the big markets are absolutely dominating free agency and this buyout market and the waivers, and you can build a super team with veteran minimum contracts now. And guys like Blake Griffin, like you would have never thought that Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge would be. I mean, LaMarcus will start, but like really, like the last viable options on a basketball team, you just wouldn't. Blake Griffin looked washed up. Brooklyn gives him a renaissance of life here because now all he has to do is what he can only do at this point, which is stand in the paint and be a body and facilitate the offense a little bit. LaMarcus Aldridge, I mean, he's still an 80 in 2K. Like he's still a decent player. But yeah, I mean, we've been having this conversation now about teams for eight seasons. I guess this is being the 9th season, 8 years. And I don't think that LaMarcus Aldridge signing with the Nets was going to change the fact that the Nets were going to win the East and probably still be the favorite to win the championship. I'm enjoying the reaction that I'm seeing from Laker fans about this signing, specifically yours just now, because that I don't know. I found some.
It's authentic. It's authentic.
It's
it's annoying.
It authentically makes me happy.
I just think back, Johnny, to David Stern, God bless his soul, vetoing Chris Paul to the Lakers.
I saw your tweet. That was one of your more viral tweets, Jonah.
I haven't checked. I've been known to have many viral tweets.
All
so if
3
that's
likes,
the case,
man, killing the game.
Hey, 3 likes is better than no likes. That's how I say. That's what I say.
Depends on who's liking your tweet.
Fair enough. But I mean, Johnny, he vetoed Chris Paul with Kobe. Those are 2 all-stars. At some point, 6 on the same team.
But that's when TV ratings were being distributed evenly. When you have to when your TV ratings are being mass accumulated by a handful of teams, you're going to protect your investment in those teams. And honestly, nobody's going to say that within the NBA office, but that's what this is. It's the same reason that Mike Krzyzewski or Nick Saban never get recruiting penalties, right? Because the NCAA it protects their investments because they have a stake. They get money from it. These are equitable programs. Same in the NBA. The national TV games, they get more eyeballs when the Brooklyn Nets are on it and they have all these talented players. The Lakers are the same way. And when the Lakers don't have LeBron James and Anthony Davis, they need to find a way to draw attention to them. And Andre Drummond brings a level of that with that signing. So I agree with you. It's frustrating, the buyout market. It's flawed. It screws up small market teams. But at the same time, it's the same old story. It's a business. The NBA is protecting their investment. Back in the David Stern days, there was a lot more continuity league-wide, right? The West and the East were a little bit more balanced. We didn't have super teams. And this is what David Stern was trying to prevent. But unfortunately, at the end of the day, money trumps everything. And that's what we're seeing with some of these situations.
True. Good stuff. Good stuff, Johnny. executive producer and a host of the Ryan D. Leaf Show,
12 o'clock
broadcaster.
Pacific time today. Catch us on YouTube.
Catch him on YouTube, on Twitter. Make sure to catch Johnny on the CIF San Diego section broadcast for high school sports. And when is Just Recruiting coming back? We've been missing that for a little bit.
It depends
it's
on
a seasonal thing. It's a seasonal thing.
I'm talking to a lot of recruits every day, but it hasn't necessarily.
You're looking at one right now. You should have me on the show. I'll talk about my athletic.
I was thinking about trying to buy Morning Joe and hosting it myself.
Yeah, I don't know if the owner is going to budge, but maybe.
I saw it on Craigslist. It was pretty cheap. I think I got it.
Yeah, I think it was a seven-figure buyout, something like that.
That's pocket change.
Jonathan Rifkind, thank you so much for joining me, man. Have a good one.
You too, brother. Take care.
All right. Jonathan Rifkind, always fun to have him on. Final topic of the day, Malkin's moments. I got a great couple Malkin's moments for you. The USC men's basketball team reaches the Elite Eight for the first time in 20 years. Yes, you heard that correctly. 20 years with their 82-68 win over Oregon yesterday. And UCLA, their men's basketball program, reached the Elite Eight for the first time since going 3 consecutive seasons in 2006, 2007, and 2008. In fact, they're the first 4 team to make the Elite Eight since VCU did it in 2011 when Shaka Smart was their head coach. In fact, they are just the second first 4 team to ever reach the Elite Eight. And as a program, they're reaching the Elite Eight for the 23rd time. That is the UCLA Bruins, whose jersey of Russell Westbrook I've got right behind me. Not to mention, this is the first time, first of all, that the Pac-12 will have 3 teams in the Elite Eight since 2001, and the first time that USC and UCLA have ever reached the Elite Eight in the same tournament. So a lot of great history being made in the City of Angels, not only from professionally, with the Dodgers winning, Lakers winning, Rams making the postseason, and now USC and UCLA playing well in the postseason. We will see what happens. Thank you so much. That's all the time that I got for you today. Thank you so much for joining me on Morning Joe right here on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook live Monday and Wednesday mornings, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. Make sure to like, review, subscribe, comment across all platforms on Twitter and on YouTube. Thank you so much again. And as always, have a lovely rest of your morning.